welcome back to Paranormally Correct. I am your host, Sarah, as always, and today we are talking about 5 things ghost hunters should never ever do. Before we get started, please take a moment to like or dislike, if you want, this video, and click the subscribe button and stick around for more spooky content. So as most of you know, I was a ghost hunter for a very long time. I investigated with a couple of different teams, and then I also investigated like full-time, and then part-time I investigated with lots of other teams. And sometimes I did like, you know, what do they call it? Hosted ghost hunts or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. It's basically where you go to a convention and then they sell you an overpriced ticket for ghost hunt later on. Woo, spilling some tea in this video. I hate that phrase. But yeah, so I've done a lot of paranormal investigations, and I've met a lot of paranormal people, and along the way I learned a lot of really interesting things, and I won't say lessons, life lessons, but I did learn that there are some things that ghost hunters should and should never do, and in case you haven't seen it yet, there is a video, 5 things ghost hunters should do, and that will be linked somewhere in the corner in the iCards, or it'll be in the description, or you know, it'll be on my channel somewhere if you want to go watch it, and I recommend you watch it. But anyway, so this is 5 things ghost hunters should never do, and I'm going to stop rambling so we can get into the video. Number 5 on the list of things ghost hunters should never do: don't be irresponsible. So maybe you've heard people preach about this, maybe you haven't. Don't be an irresponsible ghost hunter. When ghost hunting first became a big fad, a big trend for people to, you know, jump on a bandwagon and ride their way to glory, a lot of people, specifically young people, were breaking into cemeteries, and they were destroying tombstones and things like that, and it was very, very shameful. Not only was it just a terrible thing to do, it looked really bad on the rest of the paranormal community. We hear people talk a lot about, you know, cemeteries being vandalized and things like that in association with ghost hunting, but it's not always commercial lots that sometimes people are irresponsible with. I've actually been on investigations where they were not very respectful of, you know, the client's home. If it was a residential investigation, and that's always very disconcerting to see. It's an unfortunate thing that people should have to be told to be respectful of other people's property, but definitely be respectful. Don't touch anything in anyone's house that's not yours. Obviously, if it's in their house, it's probably not yours. But don't bother people's things. Don't look through people's stuff. When you go on an investigation in a residential place, touch only the things you have to touch, like power outlets and maybe the handle on the toilet a couple times a night. But I would try to keep that at a minimum, personally. Just always try to be aware of your surroundings and try to respect it as if it's yours, you know, or your relatives. You wouldn't go in your grandma's house and knock over their stuff, so don't do it anyplace else. Number 4 on the list is don't depend too much on gimmicky gadgets. When I was first starting out in ghost hunting, there were a lot of new gadgets coming out all the time. There was, you know, of course, the Ovilus was kind of a big deal. The original Ghost Hunter show, I think they had K2 meters, and there's all sorts of gadgetry out there. There are some gadgets that ghost hunters tend to use that are actually used for another purpose in life, like Geiger counters, FLIR cameras, although I hate the way I pronounce that. I apologize if that was hideous. You can focus too much on your technology. I always said that the best thing, and really the only thing you need on an investigation, is you know, an audio recorder, a good pair of headphones or earbuds, and maybe a notebook and pen. I don't think that you really need much more than that. If you're going someplace where you've got time to piddle around and play with your gadgets and kind of just test them out, that's one thing, but if you're going to a client's property to investigate, I don't think that that's very productive, honestly. In fact, I think it could be very counterproductive because, you spend too much time flexing about the cool gadgetry you have. That takes away from the time you could be doing actual research. So don't get too hung up on gadgets, especially the ones that are kind of like the Ovilus. I always pick on the Ovilus because I think it's a ridiculous concept, so we'll pick it. But I think something like that is really just kind of stifling the research that you could be doing, because it's providing you with more than likely false positive results. So just ask yourself, is this a device that I want to waste 30 minutes piddling with on an investigation when time is of the essence? And don't get too bogged down setting up apparatuses. Number 3 on the list, don't bring too many people on an investigation. I've seen different scenarios where this rule applies. Maybe the homeowner is going to invite over some people because they're all perplexed by what ghost hunters do. I've seen that happen. That always ends in disaster, by the way. Friends of investigators who were not necessarily investigators themselves and didn't really know anything about it kind of forced themselves into the investigation and basically spend the entire time getting in the way and contaminating audio and basically impeding the process. There's just so many different scenarios where this can apply, but the main thing you want to stay focused on is keeping just exactly the amount of people you need. The major problem that you encounter when you have too many people on an investigation is audio contamination. Audio, I think, is one of the most important parts of your ghost hunt. That is one of the most sensitive and fragile means of evidence collection that you have as a ghost hunter. And so if you have a lot of people, especially if they're inexperienced, if they're indifferent, if they're just kind of there for shickles, they're not going to know how to behave on an investigation. They may even, going back to one of the previous bullets on this list, they may be disrespectful if you take them with you, or if they, come later on or show up at the investigation. So a whole lot of circumstances that can be going on for this one, but just, never feel bad about saying, okay, look, we can't have too many people here. You have to leave. And this is especially hard to do when sometimes the homeowner is the one who invites the people over. But in my experience, if you talk to the homeowner and you explain to them, look, we're conducting experiments here with sensitive equipment, and these people are not necessarily aware of their surroundings like we are, and they're really going to have a hazardous effect on everything we collect and capture. Most of the time the homeowner understands and will do something about it, because for the most part they are interested in the outcome. And if they know that they're not going to get a good outcome because of willy-nilly activity, then they're more likely than not to say, okay guys, you gotta leave, you gotta go home so we can get to business. So don't be afraid to speak out against too many people on your investigation. Number 2 on the list of things ghost hunters should never do. I'm gonna get so much crap for this. Don't bring a psychic. Do not bring a psychic to a paranormal investigation. Now, I realize that most people will be expecting me at this point to defend my stance on this. I'm not going to do that. Okay, so let me just say this. I know there are tons of paranormal investigators who believe in psychics. They put a lot of faith in psychics. That's fine. We all know here on Paranormally Correct that I'm not a fan of psychics. In fact, I am very adamant about calling them out. I think that they do need to be kept in check from time to time, okay? But bear with me here before you click that dislike button. The main reason that you shouldn't bring a psychic on an investigation also kind of falls into the category of the last bullet point on this list, which is that psychics, if you have a go-to psychic that you tend to take with you, then they probably know the ropes of ghost hunting. But I feel like even if they are in the slightest familiar with how the process works, they still aren't contributing anything to the investigation itself. Now, if you love psychics and you believe everything that they all say, I hope you don't, but if you do, wait until the investigation is over and take them at a separate time. Take them at the beginning of the investigation before you actually start investigating. Let them do their psychic divining, before you get the ball rolling toward the experiments and the testing and the pseudoscientifical things we do. Honestly, if you think about it, an investigation, the very essence of it is to really kind of try to listen as close as you possibly can to every sound around you and look at everything and scrutinize everything around you as closely as you possibly can. And you can't do that if you're too busy paying attention to a psychic who's crying and swearing to God that somebody was murdered in the bedroom and that they can feel a spirit in the hallway and all these things. So regardless of how you feel about psychics, whether you believe in them or not, they really don't have much of a place as far as the testing and experimentation part of an investigation goes. And at number 1 on my listicle of 5 things ghost hunters should never ever do is charge for services. If you are a ghost hunter and you have ever charged anybody for a paranormal investigation, you should stop investigating. You should never investigate again. In fact, you should be shunned by the paranormal community as a whole. I've heard a lot of people justify this by saying, well, it takes money to travel and it takes money to stay in hotels sometimes, if we have to go to an overnight investigation. And it costs money to buy equipment. Yeah, it absolutely does. Ghost hunting can cost you a fortune if you get into all the gadgetry. Even if you want a nice night vision camera or something to take on an investigation, you want to buy a FLIR camera, that's going to cost a lot of money. Most ghost hunters prefer to have a really good modern computer that has good processing capabilities so that it can handle all of the multitude of crazy things that they want to do with it on an investigation, and sound software and video software and photo software and all of these things. Yes, it absolutely costs money to do all of that. That is not the homeowner's responsibility. We as ghost hunters are in a field of pseudoscientific practice. We're basically, in a way, occultists. We're sort of like a coven of like weird witches with gadgets, and we go out and practice our craft in residential places and commercial places. And at the end of the day, what we do is a hobby. You cannot justify charging someone because they may or may not have ghosts in their house. We should always keep in mind as ghost hunters how the rest of the world, skeptics and the scientific community and all that, how they view us. We have to think about our reputations. We have to think about the paranormal community's reputation as a whole. Every time you go on a ghost hunt, you are basically the face of the entire paranormal community, because we're a small-ish niche community. And how people who know nothing about the paranormal view you is how they'll view the rest of us. It would be extremely damning for paranormal investigators to get the reputation of being, interested in nothing but making money off of something that most people consider to be silly. To the people in the world who don't believe in this and they think that it's ridiculous and that we're, a bunch of tinfoil hat wearing nuts, it gives them more ammunition against us to basically just, group us all together as a bunch of scammers, snake oil salesmen. You can't charge for pseudoscience. You just can't do that. It's not ethical. It makes no sense. And what you're doing mostly benefits you as the ghost hunter. It's a lot of spooky, fun hocus pocus for the homeowner. But for us, the ghost hunters, it's it's about us. It's about us searching for this information. So we'll leave it at that for number one, but number one, don't ever charge for paranormal investigations. Alright guys, that is my list of things a ghost hunter should never ever do. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. Definitely check out the other video to go along with this, things a ghost hunter should do. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more spooky content. And until next time guys, don't get abducted by aliens and don't get eaten by Dogman. And I'll see you later.